Oh yeah. Hey, how you doing? I went from this to this in 30 days. Now, that might not seem quite impressive, but there are two things to tell you. Firstly, I did not hit a squash ball in those 30 days at all, nothing. And secondly, what the video doesn't show is how much more confident and comfortable I felt, besides the right arm, which we'll be talking about in the video, than I did on day 0. Now, was it witchcraft? No, of course not. Was it performance enhancing drugs? Nah, mate, ain't what you think. It's multivitamins, isn't it? Just, that's all it is, nothing else. Was it sheer luck? No, of course not. It was none of those things. It was shadow swings. Now in this video, I'm going to be talking about my 30-day shadow swing challenge. I'm going to be answering the following questions, and I'm going to be making sure I explain to you the benefits of shadow swings. So, let's get started. What the Philip are shadow swings? Well, shadow swings are basically swinging the racket without the ball. A little bit like ghosting. Ghosting is moving around the court without the ball. Shadow swings are used for two situations. One, to improve your strength, which is really what I was doing with my 30-day challenge, because I knew how to swing the racket more or less, and I wanted to just get stronger and stronger. I can't get to the squash court every single day, and most of you can't either. So shadow swings allow you to get stronger without having to go onto a squash court. The second reason for using shadow swings is to improve or reinforce or learn a new technique. Perhaps you're learning to drop the racket in the back corner. Perhaps you're learning to adjust the point of contact. Doesn't matter what you're learning, but by practicing it without the ball, you allow your body and your mind time to really understand and learn what you're trying to do without worrying about the result. The result? Hitting the ball. And what often happens is when we're on court, we don't continue learning our new technique because we just want to make contact with the ball. And yes, of course, hitting the ball is the most important. But if you're constantly cheating just to hit the ball, you're not going to improve as quickly as you should. Did you invent them? No, I didn't invent them. I coined the phrase shadow swings. Other people might have, but I'd never heard it before. And I stole it from shadow boxing. Now, back in the 1930s, a lady called Susan Knoll, in her book, More About Squash Rackets, mentions that dedicated people should take their rackets back home from the club and stand in front of the looking glass. What the Philip is a looking glass? A looking glass is what people in the 1930s called a mirror. So she was advocating standing in front of the mirror and actually swinging to make sure you're swinging properly. Now, I love this idea, but of course we're in the 2020s. We don't need mirrors, although you could still use them. We've got cameras, and you can use your phone to record yourself if you want to. So no, I didn't invent them. They've been around for nearly 100 years, but people don't do them, which is one of the reasons I'm making this video. I really want you to try them. Why should I use them? Well, I've kind of already answered this. You use them to improve your strength if you're first starting, or you use them to reinforce a new technique. Now, interestingly, just after I started doing my 30 days, a user on my YouTube channel called Stwang38 or STWang38 wrote that he had been doing them for a month and he noticed a significant improvement. In fact, the phrase that he uses, the striking improved markedly, and people in his club noticed. So that's what you use them for, getting stronger and getting better technique. Can I do them in the shower? No! Why would you even ask that? What about the park? Yes, of course you can do it in the park. Well, actually, the park is a great place because it's always nice to be outside. You've just got to pick somewhere that you're not too embarrassed, and I'll mention that a little bit later as well. Do I have to record them every day like you did? No, and I cannot tell you how annoying that aspect was. Whatever 30-day challenge I do in the future, I am 100% not recording myself every day. It was more trouble than doing the actual swings themselves. Now, as you can see, I found a location that worked quite well, but I still had to do it. I still had to make sure that I didn't get interrupted, and the whole process of recording is a complete waste of time. However, I will say though, that if you were to record yourself every 7 days, like every week, or day 0, day 10, day 20, day 30, and look at the difference, that would be an interesting project for you. It's not something you need to post on the internet like I do, but you do not need to do it every day, and I hated that aspect. If I do them every day for a single year, will I become world number 1? No, of course not. Come on, don't be silly. And yes, somebody almost asked me that many years ago. So what we're really saying here is that you should be doing something every single day to improve your squash. That's my tagline. Now, if you can't find something to do, if you don't have enough time to do any proper training, shadow swings would be a pretty good thing. So build it into your routine and see what happens. How many should I do every day? All right, now here is the key problem. I'm sure that when you watch these 30-day challenges, you really want somebody, because I watch, other ones like press-ups and pull-ups. I watch those kind of things on YouTube too. And what you really want is you want somebody to say to you, you've got to do 20 this day, you've got to do 5 this day and 10 this day. And of course, it's not always a linear progression. And I'm not going to do that for you because a lot depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to work on your technique, then you need to do less because you need to do them slower. If you're working on your strength, then you would do more. I finished by doing about 10 minutes every single day. And one of the changes was that I stopped doing little different types of swings and I just did the main swing. So if you're looking to do strength, just do the main swings. However, if, for example, you're really working on your overhead backhand shots, then do those. If you're working on your general drives, then do those. Don't make it too complicated, that's what I'm saying. Don't do it for too long. I swap between, just doing forehands and then just doing backhands and then just doing forehands. What I didn't do though, is I started by doing like both sides at the same time. And I stopped that, I can't remember when, but about halfway I think, because I realised that I then wasn't preparing properly. I suggest you do it as a heat up before you start actually playing, but for this specific isolated exercise, I suggest that you just do one type of swing. In my case, I did 120 and then I did the other side, and I did that 3 times towards the end. Why does your right arm look so weird? I know, it is so strange. It really is, it's horrible. Now, when you first start to play, you're focused on one arm, and this arm just kind of hangs there, and that's fine. As time goes on, it begins to move around, it begins to balance. So if I start to move my hand up for a forehand shot, my left hand just comes out to balance me. I've never consciously done that, it just happened. But in my 30 days doing this, it never happened. And I'll be honest, I actually think that my right hand looks worse, it looks more rigid towards the end. Even though I feel as though I'm absolutely hitting the ball better at the end of the 30 days, this right arm feels weird. The only thing I can attribute that to is I am so accustomed to hitting the ball with my right hand, I am very aware of my right hand. So that when I'm doing it, I'm trying not to move it, I'm trying to let it go naturally, but it doesn't know what to do naturally. I hope and I believe that for people who haven't spent so many years hitting the ball with one hand, it won't be such a problem. It should naturally just relax and move, but I tell you now, I'm super embarrassed to show you. It really was horrible, wasn't it? It really felt like it was glued to my side, and I'm sure I was tensing my arm as well. Yeah, I'm not perfect, of course not, and these things happen, so there you go. I've been playing for many years, should I do them? Yes, you should try them. Not everything will work for everybody, and as I said, if you're working on a new technique, 100% there's no doubt. If you're not working on a new technique, well, what have you got to lose? You've got like 10 minutes. Are you really telling me you don't have 10 minutes for you to do for 1 month to see if that there's a difference? No, don't do them for 2 weeks. No, Don't do it for a week and say, well, I don't notice a difference, I'm not really going to carry on. Do it for a month. That's what the challenges are. The challenge is a month. It really does make a difference at the end of the month. Now, as I mentioned, Stwang38 noticed a real difference. Got the feeling that he'd been hitting or playing for a while. So yes, even if you've been playing for a long time, try them, especially those high ones. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have made a video about the 5 specific swings that you can be doing. So I'll link to that in the text description. So you should check that out if you want some very specific ones. But this video was really about the scientific method from nothing to this, and it seemed to work. If you performed the challenge again, what would you do differently? Well, the very first one that I did was actually in a garage, and I was super embarrassed about somebody coming in, and it didn't last very long, probably like 2 or 3 minutes, and the lighting wasn't very good, and all of those things. So if I were to do this again, the first thing I'd do is I'd find somewhere that I'm not going to be embarrassed about. That would be my step one. I wouldn't even worry about doing the swings. I'd find somewhere that I could do it where I wasn't worried about being interrupted or people looking at me. And yes, I'm shy. I know it might not seem like it. I'm on the YouTube all the time, but I am. I don't want people staring at me. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, I would immediately decide what is my objective. Is it to improve my technique? In which case I would do less of the swings, but slower and with more focus on the exact technique. If I'm looking to improve my general strength, which is what I was trying to do with my 30 days here, I would just do the swings. I would just do 120 on forehand and then 120 on backhand, then 120 on forehand, 120 on backhand, 120 on forehand, 120 on. So I'd do that like 3 sets. And if I'd have done that for the whole month, I think there might have been even a bigger difference. If you're working on something specific, then do that thing. Do it until you feel tired. All right. As I said earlier about these challenges, we all want somebody to give us an exact number, but I don't know. You might get to like 100 and you're absolutely knackered. You might get to like 200 and you're knackered. I wouldn't do it for more than about 10 minutes though. 10 minutes every day for 30 days is pretty good. That's enough to notice a difference at the end of the 30 days. Now, if you have been playing a long time and you feel that you really are strong, one little tip that you can try is you could use another racket, like a 1980s graphite racket that is actually much heavier than yours, ideally the similar type of balance, and that would help as well. That extra weight will make it feel a little bit easier when you get onto the court. As I performed the daily swings, I occasionally made some notes, and I'd like to read those notes to you because I think that they can be quite useful. The first one is day one. I was pretty embarrassed about, doing it in the parking area because I thought somebody was going to come in. Now, I've already addressed that. Find somewhere that's suitable for you so that you're not worried about doing it. And I'm not just talking about the space available. I'm talking about, are you going to be embarrassed by somebody watching you? I was, and I should have found a better place immediately. Day 5, my hand cramped a few times, and this is fascinating because often when people start playing, they're squeezing the racket all of the time, and they shouldn't be. They should be holding the racket quite tightly when they make contact with the ball so that the racket doesn't twist or move when they hit that ball. But it's quite hard to do that when you first start. It's easy to just want to hold it tightly, and after I did my 30 days, I noticed a significant improvement in how tightly I held it. I didn't hold it as tightly, but I felt that I held it tightly enough that when I would hit the ball, it wouldn't twist. So that's a really interesting one, especially for beginners. Day 8. I stopped the combined forehand and backhand. Now, I mentioned earlier on that I thought it was about halfway, but it wasn't. It was about a third the way through. And what I'm talking about there is, instead of doing this forehand, backhand, forehand, backhand, what I did was backhand, 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 and I did 120 of those, and then 120 forehands, etc., etc. I felt that the forehand and the backhand combined wasn't working for me. Yes, for the heat up, but not for this specific exercise. Day 10. Controlling the wrist twist follow through on the backhand was much harder than I remember. Now, when you first start playing, you think that the hardest part is actually bringing the racket forward, but it's not. It's actually stopping it afterwards. Now, you don't want to stop it immediately after you've made contact with the ball, because that means you would be slowing down before you hit it. You want to be accelerating up to the point of contact, and then you want to slow the swing down. You don't want a big swing, because that's dangerous. You don't want a big swing because it means that you then can't respond quickly enough to the next shot. So what you do is you hit the ball and you kind of stop your hand. And I found that that motion afterwards was really difficult for me. I couldn't control it, at least at the beginning. Towards the end, I noticed a big difference. And some of those things are not evident when you see people hitting the ball, and I recognize that you see somebody hitting the ball, like the two videos I showed at the beginning, the before and after, and you can't necessarily see that, but that's what I was alluding to when I was talking about feeling much more comfortable. All right, day 12. My right arm feels so unnatural just hanging there. Could it be that it's used to holding and swinging the racket? Do beginners feel the same thing? So again, I've already addressed that. It's that idea that because I'm right-handed and because I've spent thousands and thousands of hours hitting the ball with my right hand, it feels extra strange compared to a beginner. Love to hear your thoughts on that in the comments. Day 18, beginning to feel a big difference in confidence between the backhand, which is high confidence, and the forehand low. Really felt comfortable on this backhand, really do. Absolutely. Still feels a bit weird on this forehand. Now, generally, forehands are harder, meaning you can hit the ball harder than you do on your backhand. But generally, the better you get, the better your backhand gets. Why do you think professionals spend so much time rallying up and down the back wall, or back on the backhand wall? Is it because they think that their opponent's backhand is weaker? No, it's because they think that their backhand is better than their forehand. So they try to keep it on that side. Generally find that backhands are tighter down the wall. So that was sort of interesting for me. I might be opposite. I feel more confident on my backhand. Day 22. Stop the volleys, the slow swings and the forearm swings. Decided to focus on just swinging. All right, so that's really what I was mentioning earlier on about the forehand and the backhand. I did this challenge because I wanted to see how much stronger I could get. It wasn't because I really needed to improve my technique. I think my technique is pretty good, actually. It looks a bit weird, but it's okay. I didn't need to do the volleys because I'm not actually playing squash with my left hand. So for me, I focused on what I needed. And that's key, because you should do the same. If you're focusing on technique, don't do 120, do maybe 50, but do them slowly, really focusing on the technique. So define your objective at the beginning, and that will decide what type of swings you should be doing. Day 23, wondering whether I should start swinging with more force. Decided not to finish the challenge. So what I'm talking about there is, should I have really started to put more shoulders into it? Should I have really started to, swing as if I was trying to hit the ball hard? And I decided no, because just swinging was enough. It was the first time I was doing this. I don't play left-handed, so it was okay. But for you, maybe that's an option. Maybe you really need to improve your power, and that would be one way of doing it. Make sure you're hot before you do it, so don't start by swinging as hard as you can. Maybe do 120 at the regular speed, and then the next 60 quite hard, and then another 120 after that. Try it and see what works for you. Day 28, looking forward to not having to record the swings. I hate having to make sure I can. talked about this already, sorry. God, I hated doing the recording. You don't have to worry, so it's no problem for you. And then the final one is day 30. Yay, finished. So I was happy, I won't deny it, I was happy to have finished, but mostly because of this recording the camera. Actually, I wish, it's been about 2 weeks since I finished actually doing the swings. I hoped to make this video immediately afterwards, but I just didn't get time. I kind of wish that I'd carried on doing it. I do. I wish that I'd carried on doing it. Even if I only did it for 5 minutes, it would be something that, you know, will help me in the future. I'm not looking to play left-handed, but it would have been interesting to carry on. Here are my takeaways. 1, even 2 minutes a day on a squash court, hitting the ball will be better than 10 minutes with just shadow swings. There is no doubt that hitting the ball is better than not hitting the ball, as obvious as that sounds. What I'm trying to say is that shadow swings shouldn't replace going on court. They should be an addition, a supplement. I can't get on court every day, and I'm pretty sure that you can't either. So if you can't, but you still want to improve, especially if you're really, you know, just learning squash or just starting to play, this is an absolutely fantastic thing for you to do. It is easy, it is free, and it will help you. But it is not a substitute for getting on court. And that was it. 30-day shadow swing challenge. I really hope that you decide to take on that challenge, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. And as always, if you have any doubts or questions, post them in the comments below and I'll respond as soon as I can. And as always, do something every single day to improve your squash. See ya.